Donald Trump's budget proposal has had a frosty reception from both Wall Street analysts and key Republicans. It calls for deep cuts in domestic programs to fund a major increase in defense spending.
President Trump is out with his budget, and it's probably more awful than we even expected. He takes a machete to programs for the poor, the elderly, and bloats the military even further.
You look at that budget. Every heartless, brutal idea from these establishment Washington, D.C. think tanks, which are completely cut off from real life, they just cut and pasted all their bad ideas, put it in one document and said, here's your budget, sir. We're going to cut federal funding for Meals on Wheels, and everybody's going to love it, right?
While most have been talking about Trump's budget proposal for 2018, some others are staying completely silent on the matter. But let's hear what is being said.
Well, guess what, Trump voters? Got bad news for you. That same orthodoxy that Trump ran against today, that is Trump's only agenda in the White House, 100%.
Let's look at the particulars here. Programs to mitigate climate change are cut or eliminated across the government. Programs to assist the poor are slashed, and while almost every department would face large cuts, 3 would see sizable increases in spending: defense, homeland security, and veterans affairs. Trump wants to fund a border wall, deportation raids, a hiring spree for Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and purchase our new F-35 fighter jets and a variety of Navy vessels. And it would dramatically hamper enforcement of environmental and labor regulations and grant and loan programs for clean energy and disadvantaged regions, and significantly reduce funding for biomedical research. The EPA will be cut by 31%. From $8.2 billion down to $5.7 billion, the lowest level after adjusting for inflation in 40 years, and below where even congressional Republicans wanted it. Specifically, the budget discontinues funding for the Clean Power Plan, international climate change programs, climate change research and partnership programs and related efforts, and reduces Superfund cleanup funding.
So the biggest cuts goes to Environmental Protection Agency, as you would expect from someone who loves big oil companies.
You ever see these guys, how good they are, the great oil companies?
Second is state.
State is just behind that, and I want to point that out because earlier today, Mick Mulvaney, who's the U.S. Budget Director, spoke more on those cuts for the State Department specifically. Take a listen.
Much of the foreign aid that the president talked about in campaign, much of the money that goes to climate research, green energy, those types of things are actually in the State Department budget. We're not spending money on that anymore. We consider that to be a waste of your money to go out and do that.
Because of course the Trump administration doesn't want to help any research to get off the oil dependency. I mean, for crying out loud, he made Rex Tillerson, a former CEO for ExxonMobil, Secretary of State.
Well, first, I want to express my profound thanks to President Trump.
You ever see these guys, how good they are, the great oil companies?
As you can see on this chart, the cuts are vast and include labor and education. But what is not included on Trump's proposed cuts, and almost no one is talking about, are the billions of tax dollars sent to Israel.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
But of course, most are dwelling on the military boost, and for good reason.
We now have an exact figure for how much Donald Trump wants to increase military spending, and it is colossally unnecessary and wasteful and dumb. So Huffington Post reports here, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Monday he is seeking a historic increase in military spending to be funded by cuts elsewhere in government. Trump will seek to boost Pentagon spending by $54 billion in his first budget proposal and slash the same amount from non-defense spending. Wowzers. So first of all, why don't we go ahead and take a look at what the U.S. spends versus the rest of the world? Yeah. Now, you guys have seen this chart before. we spend more than the next 9 largest countries combined. The next 9 largest countries with their military budgets combined. We actually spend 36% of the world's military expenditures. I mean, think about that, man. That's nuts. Now, this is also one of the scariest charts. We've shown this before, too. But let's look at how much the U.S. spends as a percentage of our discretionary budget. Over 50%. Now, what this doesn't include is Social Security and Medicare. But again, it's the discretionary spending that we're talking about here. But does that show you our priorities or what?
One could easily argue that the U.S. priority is to fight Israel's wars for them.
When you look at this horror show of a budget and you combine that with the healthcare plan, there's really only one conclusion I can come to. The messy truth for Donald Trump's voters is that Donald Trump has already been captured and co-opted by the very same DC insiders.
Gee, do you think? Some of us have been saying it for a long time.